Have you ever noticed that when big men leave the NBA, the leagues that they typically go to are South American leagues, Asian leagues, or the Australian NBL? Here's why. When you're a dominant big in the NBA, or even somebody that has had success to some degree, there's certain markets overseas that's gonna let you play your game. If you're leaving the NBA with the NBA pedigree and you were only known for being a defensive dominant machine and you come to Europe, for example, they're gonna want you to stay in that role. Whereas if you sign to an Asian club and you're known for being DeMarcus Cousins, for example, they're gonna let you play whatever you want to play. They're gonna let you bring the ball up. They're gonna let you shoot threes as much as you want, as long as you bring that excitement to the game that you're used to. Think about where Dwight Howard signed after he left the NBA. He went straight to Taiwan and the Asian markets. JaVale Mcgee is now in the Australian NBA, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from his newfound resurgence in basketball. JaVale Mcgee is back in basketball relevancy again, so much so that one NBL commentator said that watching JaVale in the NBL looks like watching Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain.
But like, look, I thought I was watching Wilt Chamberlain. Well, they didn't quite know how.
So for the average basketball fan, you probably remember JaVale Mcgee to be a 36-year-old center with the Sacramento Kings, playing only 46 out of 82 possible games. But since then, JaVale's been bouncing around overseas and finding his groove back. And now at 37 years old, it's safe to say this is possibly the most fun he's had playing basketball. Since being drafted in 2008 in the first round, number 18 overall, JaVale has been somewhat of a journeyman in the NBA. Starting his stint in Washington, where he was a young lion, hungry, chasing down every block, grabbing every offensive and defensive rebound, flashing his athleticism that really set him apart from other young players. Standing at 7 foot even by his 4th year in the NBA, he was up to 11.9 points per game, which in the NBA for a young player under the age of 25, that's really good. In 2012, he was traded to Denver, who was in a bit of a figure it out stage. I like to call it a pre-rebuild stage because Carmelo Anthony had just left the team to go to the Knicks, and it was just before they picked up a young Nikola Jokic in the NBA draft. So from the outside, it seemed like there was a lot of opportunity, but the role that they had him in probably didn't best fit what he does best. He stayed in Denver for 3 years until he was then dealt to the Philadelphia 76ers, where he finished out the year, and the very next season he was off to Dallas. He found a landing spot in Golden State, where he stayed from 2016 to 2018, winning 2 championships. Then luck struck again because the very next team, at 31 years old, he signed to play with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he again won a championship, the bubble championship, in 2020. The last years of his NBA career pretty much went like this: Cleveland, Denver, Phoenix, Dallas, Sacramento. And that brings us to where he is now. For a guy that was never known as a scorer in the NBA, how did he go to Puerto Rico, averaging over 20 points? And now he's in the Australian NBL, a very respected league, and for good reason. It's a tough league, and now he's averaging over 30 points a game. How is that possible? I'll tell you how. See, in the NBA, guys like JaVale Mcgee have a very specific skill set that needs to be developed and encouraged the right way. When he came in, he was such a raw athlete, and I feel like he was never given the opportunity to show his full potential, his full range of a basketball game, which is pretty much normal because in the NBA, they want you to do what they feel is the best for the team. And if you're not heads and shoulders the most talented or skillful, offensively gifted players on the team, then you're probably not going to be able to develop the right way. So a guy like JaVale was kind of stuck in the middle in a lot of situations. But there was one thing that was kind of holding him back. It was really how he was perceived as a player. JaVale was often the butt of the joke when it came to the basketball media world. He had guys like Shaq, Kenny Smith, and Charles Barkley pointing fun at some of the mistakes he was making in the early stages of his career. Remember, this is a guy that got drafted at 21, and up until that point, he had the freedom to play however he wanted to play. So I'd say this: fitting into the mold that the NBA teams wanted him to fit in took some growing pains, to say the least. But guys like Shaq came full on, and I think it really messed up his psyche.
Shaquille O'Neal, he seems to be your biggest fan.
I don't know, it's more like a bully, I guess.
He became one of the main subjects of Shaq's Shaq'd in a Fool. And even JaVale will tell you that it was messing up his mentality.
I didn't understand how strong the media was, and I didn't understand that people actually took it serious.
That was when it messed me up. Out of this game, I did one bad play, but I had 15 and 6 blocks. But y'all didn't show none of that. People really think I'm really bad. They don't really think I'm a good player. Like kids coming up to me, Shaq the fool.
Now for me, you got to think about it like this when it comes to playing in the NBA. Your window is so small, and you got to do exactly what is asked of you in order to stick around. I say that a lot on this channel, and I sometimes get flack for it because I see guys like Jared Vanderbilt, who it just came out in the summertime. He was making workout videos of him taking the pick and roll. And to me, it's like, if you're 27 years old and they're paying you X amount of dollars to be a 3-and-D, maybe you shouldn't reinvent yourself and try to do different things in year 9. So I think for JaVale, he had a lot more to show in his game, but they didn't really want him to do anything outside of block shots, grab rebounds, and run the court. And you can see his first year of overseas basketball, as I mentioned before, he's on that market where they're gonna let you hoop a little bit. Now he's doing jab step, and he's playing off the jab. Now he's doing post-ups. I never really seen JaVale McGee post up consistently in the NBA. He may have done it, but I just don't recall seeing it. And I don't recall it being a part of anybody's offense. Now, when you come overseas, the ball is going right to you. The coach is going to ask you, where do you like to score? I'm sure when the coach asked him, where does he like to score, he had to think about it because he's probably only used to scoring being an option in an offense when he's playing pickup, because his whole career he's been playing a certain role. And for the record, JaVale had a very successful career in the NBA. He stuck around for like 15 years. He won 3 championships. So it's not a failure. However, now he's having fun with the game. Now he's at the point where he can show his full repertoire, his full arsenal. Back to the NBL, where he's been called the Wilt Chamberlain of Australian basketball, which is a crazy statement to make, but I'm rolling with it. If you watch the tape, he was seriously dominant on the offensive end. And if you don't know, he's playing with Illawarra Hawks, the same team that produced LaMelo Ball. And LaMelo Ball actually is part of the ownership group that bought the Illawarra Hawks shortly after his stint with the team. But back to JaVale. Not only is he hooping, but like I said, man, you can just tell that he's having fun with the game. This is the brand of basketball that he's always wanted to play. Who doesn't want to play this way? You get paid your money, you get your touches on offense, you get free range, your coach is not up your butt about every little mistake you make. Now you're seeing JaVale, like I said, he's playing out of the jab, face-ups, he's hitting mid-range pull-ups, and he's just having fun. I mean, he's always been the type of guy that had fun on the court, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that his last few years in the league, that joy kind of left him a little bit. Look at this spin move into a serious bang out. JaVale is 37 years old and he's still getting up like that. I mean, kudos to him for keeping his body in shape, because it's not easy to do. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Now on defense, he's still gonna block shots and he's gonna be very competitive, grabbing rebounds. He's not the fastest and the most fluid athlete, so guarding the pick and roll and drop defense can become a challenge for him. However, when you're doing this in this league, and that's kind of what I want to speak about next, is playing in the right league for American guys is so important, because the NBL is a league that kind of mirrors the NBA style. He can essentially be a version of what we saw from DeMarcus Cousins, Zach Randolph in the NBA, in the NBL, whereas those kind of prototypes of players don't necessarily exist in the EuroLeague. They're not going to really let JaVale McGee post up in the EuroLeague. I'm just being honest. He's going to be a pick and roll lob threat over the top and grab us some offensive rebounds, do some little hook shots every now and then in the short corners, but they're going to put a more definitive role on him. NBL, I think after this, he'll probably go back to South America, play in Puerto Rico, or maybe he'll head over to Asia next season. And these kind of leagues, he can really preserve his career, make some money on, there's not going to be NBA money, but you'll make your money and also play your style of basketball. Because at the end of the day, winning championships, making a lot of money, we're basketball players. We want to do what we want to do. We want to express ourselves on the court. This is our sanctuary at the end of the day. This is what we dream about as kids. We want to come in and contribute to winning. We want to contribute to a program, but we also want to have fun doing it. And the way you have fun is by playing your game. So from JaVale's situation, I think it's a great sign for a little bit older players who's like getting phased out of the league. I'm not even going to put Westbrook in this conversation because he's got a whole separate situation going on with his profile, with his status. It'd be harder for him to come over here and kind of, find that joy back for himself. But you got a guy like JaVale, like this is the perfect situation for him to just get back to the essence, get back to the roots, become the player that, or present as the player that you always knew that you were, but you didn't really have the opportunity to show it at the NBA level. I think this is a great career extender for him. And it can be the same for a lot of other players.